Hey guys, this is Kevin Cairn with Precision Powerlifting Systems. I'm joined by Jay Birdie of Jay Birdie Fitness. So today I'm going to talk about autonomy and the importance of autonomy in skill development. I've talked about fear and frustration in previous videos, and basically I've said this in the other videos as well, that our brain doesn't really know emotions. It just kind of knows neurochemistry and the electricity that comes with it, right? So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it into a state where we set our neurochemistry up to learn a skill, right? And force production is still learning a skill. So we want to set up the training environment in a way that our neurochemistry is working for us, and we develop the tools and the understanding to actually get the most out of our training. So when we look at the internet and we see all these different options of programming and coaching and all of these things, every program works up into a point, right? Like, and I'm gonna kind of talk about like general population versus like powerlifting. So any one of us who's coached people, most people watching this are coaches. I literally feel like I'm gonna sneeze right now. But I'm sure you've coached adult fitness classes or you've done one-on-one stuff.
Yep.
And when you do the adult fitness classes, the one-on-ones, people kind of get stronger up to a point and then they just kind of like level off because they don't really have an intention or a focus on developing a specific skill in the gym. They're just there for the health benefits of it, right? And maybe the part of their exercising in those classes is actually just to kind of set their neurochemistry up for later on to actually develop a higher level skill if, you know, they want to be better at their job or they play a musical instrument or whatever it may be. Exercise plays beneficial roles in learning and setting the stage for learning. But when the attention and the focus goes on to a specific task within exercising, so let's say we take that general population or that one-on-one fitness client and they want to be a power lifter. The second that they make that choice and that their attention becomes more narrowed into developing that skill in the gym, they tend to just get way stronger. And it probably doesn't even matter what the program is, they're just setting the neurochemistry up with that increased attention on the details of being a power lifter that just improves performance. And that'll work up until a certain point until that stops. And there's a reason why average is average and not everybody becomes a high level athlete. It's because there's certain understandings from the coach and from the lifter themselves and certain things that we need to do to set that stage up for us to develop that high level skill. It's not necessarily fun and enjoyable to develop high level skill. There's a lot of fear and frustration, which I've talked about in previous videos, and the neurochemistry that comes along with that and how that is necessary if you want to develop high level skill. But if you're just there for fun or for the other benefits of lifting weights, just the general health benefits, your ceiling's just going to be a lot lower because the attention and the focus is not directed into one area, which is why I say a lot how important the attention and the focus is, because it actually increases our ability to learn, which then increases any skill is a learned behavior. So it increases our ability to actually increase a skill. So our attention network in our brain is actually coupled with autonomy. So when you're cruising around the internet, you'll hear the words like autonomy and self-efficacy and how important it is. I think you see it a lot in the physical therapy world when clinicians are talking about dealing with patients with pain, and you see it a lot in the training world just in general, that giving people the self-efficacy and the autonomy to do things is important for increasing their skill level of production in anything. Which is true, but there are limits to that, and there's certain constraints that need to be put in that system in order for it to actually be beneficial. So there's just something that's positive that happens. So when we're experiencing autonomy, we're in control of our mind and our destiny at that point in time, right? We're not focused on the future, we're not focused on the past. We're just kind of in that moment, and we're just kind of exchanging ideas with our general environment. You're in the now, and that's really important and this is why like that attention network fires up when we're in a situation where we're experiencing autonomy, is because we're focusing on the now, what we're doing in that current moment. So it just kind of helps somebody pay attention. I know it sounds kind of like wishy-washy saying something like that, but it's really true. And like certain areas of our brain begin to light up using autonomy and self-efficacy that allow for those positive benefits to take place, for that learning to take place. This is probably why when you look at pain research, if you just Google pain and self-efficacy, you can see how important self-efficacy is to managing pain symptoms. And the reason for that is because when we feel like we're in control of our own destiny, there's a lot of positive benefits that come from that neurochemically and hormonally. Even I think there's just this like, it's probably more in our culture, but this general just like fear of death and the inevitable in the future, or just fear of the future in general, that doesn't really allow somebody to experience the being present in the now, like focusing and having that attention on one thing, right? So if you take somebody who's just a general fitness client and they're just, say they're doing one-on-ones with Jess running around because they don't want to die of a heart attack later on, so they're just kind of doing it to do it, but they're not really trying to improve upon anything specific. Yeah, they'll develop some type of positive benefits from it, of course, but it's not going to be as good as something that they truly are enjoying and engaged in, that increases that attention and focus. So even if you're a general population client, or you're coaching general population fitness people, whatever it is, you want them to have some type of clear goals of where they want to go. And it can't just be this, oh, I want better blood pressure. There needs to be these like objective measures within the gym that they're striving for, or whatever it is, right? Any objective measure. It doesn't even have to be in the gym. It could be outside of the gym or whatever. So like the second that you get that attention and that focus by saying, hey, I'm going to compete in powerlifting, and you start narrowing that focus into that one topic, you do start to develop the neurochemistry and the hormones necessary to get strong. That's why you start to see it in the beginning. But like when we have that feeling of control of our own destiny, it does. There's a lot of, it's the endorphins that kick in, right? You get the dopamine and the norepinephrine, the stuff that I was talking about before. So the autonomy brings those in, and the more dopamine, the more norepinephrine that we can bring in, the better that internal learning environment is set for us to be motivated, and for us to learn new skills. And we're talking about developing high-level performance, not just putting a 5-pound PR on somebody. We're talking about in 5-10 years from now, that person being a high-level lifter, no matter who it is. And these are the things that are important for it. So the thing with autonomy and self-efficacy, even though it's really important, there has to be reins on it. So there's some companies like 3M is one of them. I think Google's another one. Patagonia is another one, where they actually allow their workers kind of free time to work on projects that they want to work on themselves. So when they actually like value this out to, we give them X amount of time, they take in way more money, and it's way more profitable to allow some type of an autonomy with their employees to their bottom line. But they only give 10 to 15% with their bottom lines. With their autonomy. So if let's say you're working, for every 10 hours you work, you get an hour of autonomy, right? So like we need to think about this in terms of like developing a skill at the same time. It's not just you write something on paper and you let them run wild and just self-efficacy because they feel this is the best way to do things and this is what they want to do and all of those things. That's not what this is for. So even in those cases, to really truly reap the true benefits of autonomy, 90% of that is actually directed by the employer. The other 10%, they're allowed to do things. So how does that work for us? Well, for one, actually, let me back up just a little bit. So even during times of autonomy, there has to be some direction. So let's talk about self-organization. I don't know if I'm going to need this, but let's talk about self-organization of technique and how it works with attention and autonomy. So a lot of times you'll hear coaches, well, this works for them. And that's great, it might, but if we want to truly explore, so the principle of dynamic organization says the body's always looking for more efficient ways to move. And if we truly want to exploit that part of it, we have to constrain the system so that they're just not looking around everywhere. So if they're in a position, they feel like they're struggling with the squat, and we don't give them direction on what they need to do with the squat, the brain will just start to wander. So we don't get that focused in attention that we need on those specific details in order to actually enhance the skill to that level that we want to enhance it to. If that brain's just allowed to wander everywhere, it's basically just, it gets really confused. So we need to constrain the system. This is why immediate feedback is so important, so that they can focus on one thing, so that attention, that focus can be directed towards its basically clear goals of a training session. Like, hey, you got to keep your back tight doing this, keep your back tight, keep your back tight. Whatever cues you're using to do those things, it's really important. So we can't just throw them to the wolves and let them kind of try to figure it out, because you don't get the attention and the focus you need on specific details in order to truly develop high level skill. So I was having a conversation with Keith Davids on the Philosophical Weightlifting podcast a few weeks ago, and he had said that like one of the things that you can do with athletes is let them warm up on their own, right? There's probably 10% of the time, maybe even less, but you're giving them a little autonomy to do something. You're increasing that neurochemistry to build a really strong learning environment. And again, the more dopamine, the more norepinephrine, those learning neurotransmitters, the more of those that we can get into the system, the better off we're going to be. So you want to set everything up to keep getting those blast of those neurochemicals. So one of the things with autonomy, max effort work, right? So when I give lifters max effort work, they have rules to follow, right? One of the rules is leave 5 to 10 pounds on the bar week 1, so that we can then focus on something week 2 that we saw break down. So then that we can hit a small PR on week 3, which gives us another blast of dopamine, right? So like when we get to that week 3, hitting those small PRs, those small incremental wins, they build up more dopamine, more norepinephrine in the process. Increases motivation, increases learning. And over time, if you do things well and make good training decisions, you're rewarded for them literally by the reward chemicals of your brain. So with max effort work, the lifters have to choose their jumps and they have to make those decisions themselves. So on week 3, they know kind of what weight they have to go on, but week 1, there's a lot of being open-ended in this case here, where they need to make those decisions. And more often than not, in the beginning, they fuck up those decisions a lot. But then there's conversations and they start to learn, and then when they make the right decisions, there's another blast of dopamine and norepinephrine that comes into the picture. So for one, they have to pick their own weights. Also, what I do in the programs is I say the muscle groups that I want them to work on with their accessories. I let them choose the exercises, and I'll give them feedback based off of what they choose. So if they do something and, for hamstrings, and they're like, oh, I did dumbbell RDLs. All right, let's do something that's more specific to the hamstrings, just at the hamstrings and just at the knee joint. So let's do banded leg curls or lying leg curls or something like that. I will guide that process a little bit. But in terms of like skill development for the actual technique, when you hear about like self-organization, it's like they'll figure it out just by doing it. Again, if they're not getting that feedback and they don't have clear goals of what the lift should look like, that's why every coach needs to have technical heuristics, and it is extremely important if you want to develop high level skill. You can get somebody who's really strong and really good at the sport, and they're putting up good numbers doing your program, and it's great. But how do you take a regular person from the empty bar and turn them into an above average lifter over a longer period of time? It's really important that there's technical heuristics within the lifts, that the lifter is aware of what you're looking for, so they have that clear goal of where they want to go, and they get immediate feedback via your coaching or their understanding of it, and they're filming it and looking at it, that they know what to focus on and they know what to adjust over time. So with autonomy, you need to set up the environment where they can explore the environment, but there's constraints within that environment that allow them to narrow down that focus. So if I want to teach them to sit back on a box, if I want to teach them to sit back in a squat, this is where box squats come in, right? It's that environmental cue. And basically what autonomy is, it's you exchanging ideas with the environment. So you're fully present in the now to exchange those ideas. So the box being there, it's giving your body that idea of, I need to sit back. And then you're sitting back onto the box. So it just becomes this like nice flow between you and the environment itself. So in those cases there's still, you're still going to explore like what's a comfortable bar position, grip width, where do I need to put my feet, how much weight do I put on the bar? Like there's all these decisions that still come into play with this, and they're still exploring their environment. And you can kind of give other things, right? If I put bands on the bar, it's going to change a little bit. If we use a specialty bar, it's going to change it a little bit. So they're exploring all of these different options that are really highlighting some things that it's the options themselves become immediate feedback at times. So that's where the environment's exchanging ideas also is, if I'm using a safety squat bar and all of a sudden I'm getting pitched forward or the bar is curling me really rounding me over. That's the environment giving me feedback. And you feel it, and that's that immediate feedback where you're like, okay, I need to respond a little bit differently. So it's this exchange of ideas between the environment and the person, and how the person is going to navigate their environment. But that autonomy, it's important because it lays the neurochemical backdrop to learn. So RPE is pretty, I think would be a pretty good argument in terms of giving somebody autonomy and self-efficacy, because you're focused on, all right, how heavy does this feel? Do I need to adjust? Do I need to put more weight, less weight, whatever it is? But I think at the same time, there's maybe not enough constraints on that autonomy that allows them to kind of really truly benefit from it. Because the coach should still be, just like those companies do, the coach should still be planning about 90% of this stuff and really like giving them clear goals, giving them immediate feedback, and allowing them to explore the environment within those constraints that you're giving them with. This is what I want out of the lifts. This is what we need to do. They get the feedback from the bars, the bands, the boxes, whatever you're using. And they get to adjust. And part of having self-efficacy and autonomy is understanding the training process, being educated in the training process, knowing what your clear goals are, and being able to literally do it yourself. Like you can look on your phone after you're filming, and you're like, okay, so this is what's happening in the squat. I'm going to focus on this one thing. And then you're going to do it again. And the lifters who do that tend to do the best. But it's because they have good communication with their coach, and they have clearly listed out goals. They're getting the feedback, they're educated, they're taking control of their environment, and that's really important for performance. So I think I said everything I wanted to say in autonomy and self-efficacy. I want to keep this one a little bit shorter. Do you have questions, Jess?
No.
Were you listening?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, good for you.
For the most part, yes.
All right, so I'm gonna, I'll get into more maybe finite details of this stuff in other videos, but for now you can follow me on Instagram. It's KWCan, our team, Precision Powerlifting Systems, and Jay Birdie.
Ready?